All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Bible study this week, looking at the readings for Sunday, November 15th. And I'm joined by our Thursday morning Bible study group today. We just finished praying. Lots to pray for, lots to be thankful for. And so we are going to start out in our gospel reading today. And Anne is going to read for us Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30.
The parable of the talents. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the other 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with all things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with the 2 talents also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, and good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, and I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received the 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man and harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For anyone who has will be given more, and he will have more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthiness servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
I always think
Sorry about the end.
That's okay.
One
of my seminary professors always said, the gospel of the Lord, and it ends with weeping and gnashing of the teeth. And this is the gospel of the Lord. Doesn't sound very gospel-y, but there is gospel in here. What are your thoughts? What jumps out at you?
It always seems unfair at first. Like when the first time I heard this, I thought, oh, he was so good. He saved, his money. But I guess if you don't share that blessing, then what good is it, right? I don't know. That's kind of how I see it. But.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as money. I saw it as blessings that you have in your life, and that he goes out and takes those blessings and shares them with others. And when you share blessings in life, more comes back to you. That's the way I always looked at it.
That's what I look at it too. It's kind of what my brother did for his boss.
Yeah.
One of the things that was interesting about a discussion on this was that whether you're Jeff Bezos, spending $3 billion on a stock transfer.
Yeah, he's got the million bags of gold that this one doesn't talk about. Yeah.
Or you're a Sunday school teacher teaching a Sunday school class. You're giving your talent. I think the mistake is to only equate talent with money. It's what you're doing with your gifts that you've been given. Like Ann said, whatever gift you have to give. That woman that teaches Sunday school, every Sunday morning has a gift, and she's using that. She's not keeping it hidden.
Yeah.
Anyway. away from people.
Yeah, and some translations talk about talents, and it's a measure of weight. So it's an interesting English connection to the word, and I don't know if that has any. I don't know the etymology of the word talent in English, and if it perchance comes from, that sort of like a measure. I have no idea, so I should be careful what I say here, because I don't want to say something wrong. But it is an interesting parallel in the English words.
I think years ago I read a book, and I have to look it up. It may not be entirely correct, but they had that book that was called Silas Marner. Any of you read
Oh,
that?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Silas Marner, and that's where he has the money, but he doesn't do anything with it. He just stays and counts it every day and doesn't really put it to work. It had a happy ending, if I remember.
Yes, it does. It has a very happy ending.
Yeah.
So all right. So we've got a few different themes that we can unpack here, and the one that Ed just mentioned in the end is the I guess the guilt that we have of maybe being terrified of not using what we've been given, and a lot of times this verse is used as a stewardship verse, and to try to encourage us to be I guess faithful, which is good, but there's more. I think there's more here, because we can look at that and we can be just like I think it was Isabel who said it kind of feels unfair, and we have to be careful, because remember I said there is gospel in here. So if we're only hearing judgment and fear and don't be the wicked and lazy, don't be the the unfaithful, don't be the ungenerous, as with most things in theology, we're probably not looking at the right place. If really what we always want to do in scripture is train our eyes on God. We want to learn, we want to see him, and what he does teach us things about ourselves. And sometimes I think we feel maybe we see ourselves as being the person who multiplied the 10 by 10, and we think, hey, like we were talking about Jeff today, and hey, I maybe I did good today. But we do obviously find ourselves at a time where we feel like we were the person who just kind of hit it in the ground. So where's the comfort in this? And I think, and I just want to add, sometimes people hear this parable, the church already has a bit of call it a black eye in society. And, people will use their excuses, but then they come to church some Sunday, you finally bring your friend to church, and then they hear this reading about the God who smites because you didn't make him enough money. And they think, see, I knew this. It's not necessarily the best verse for a newcomer to hear. And so we want to really, I think sometimes it's a good lens, or, earpiece with which to hear through is, what is this? How does it sound to a person who maybe isn't as, trained in how to see the law and the gospel? So we got to make sure we pull it out. So what I think we can do is say, maybe this reading isn't as much about the servants as it is about the God. And what Jesus does is he really reveals to us a God who, does two things. He is, he's personal and he's generous. And he's personal in the way that he gives out the talents himself. Isn't that interesting? He's going on the journey, but he doesn't have somebody else do this. He's actually giving to them. And do you notice what it says in terms of how he distributes the quantities? Does anybody remember or recognize the phrase in there early on? See if you can find that verse. How he determines how much to give. I'm struggling here. It is
2, 1, each according to his ability.
What verse is that? I'm staring at all these verses and I'm
It's
struggling.
15.
15. I'm sorry, 15. You're
15.
right.
I kept reading down further. Yeah, it's right at the
To
beginning.
Yeah, to one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent,
Right.
which each according to
Each
his ability.
according to his ability.
So,
Yeah.
so one thing that this tells us about God is he knows us. He knows, and it seems as though he was right, doesn't it? In terms of the multiplication. So there's comfort there. Again, with anything with God's omniscience, his omnipotence or whatever, we could be convicted by it and we could be like, oh, he knows us, but let's take comfort from the fact that he knows what they're capable of and he distributes it accordingly. But what also is beautiful is it's just like the widow's mite. She gave in such a small amount on the surface, but it represented such a great use of her wealth that he praised her, right? So here he's just as proud or happy of the one who multiplied the 5 as the one who multiplied the 10. And so
The 2.
is this 5? Oh, I'm thinking it's 10, 5. It's 5, 2, and 1, right? He's just as praising of the one who multiplied the 2 as the 5. So that's something else. He's very personal. He's personal in the way he gives the gifts by himself, handing them out, and he's personal the way he knows them. And the other thing is, we have to know that he's generous, right? This is not their money. This is his money. And so when we talk about, and I think it was Anne who brought this up in the beginning, that it's not just about money. It's about any kind of resource that God gives. And so have you ever heard the saying, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's something for me early in ministry. It's kind of one of those secret phrases that pastors pass down to young pastors because we all hit a spot where we're like, I can't do this. And it's like, yeah, you don't have everything that you need for this. God didn't pick you because you were so awesome at everything. He's going to equip you for what he called you to. So it's humbling, and it's also a very healthy reminder. So here's, what he gives is something that he gives of himself. And thankfully, yeah, it's not just money. It's the ability to talk. It's the ability to encourage. It's the ability to lead. It's the ability to serve. All these different, things that the church needs and that the world needs, right?
Right.
So he gives us generously. He resources us. I really like to think of it in terms of resources, whether it's monetary or otherwise. And then I think the last point for us to really know is that he is a God. What this is really about, the error, or let me put it in phrase of a question. When you think of the guy, the last one who took the 1 and he hid it, what do you see as the big mistake he made?
Hiding it.
Hiding it. Okay. Yeah. Not using it. And sometimes we think that that his biggest mistake was in failing to use what he was given. And there definitely is something to that. We're not going to say that that was right, but probably his biggest error was he didn't know what's the reason that he said he hid it.
To keep it safe, right?
Because
And a hard master.
yeah, hard master. He didn't
Well, one
really.
of the things that's kind of interesting as from a societal standpoint
Yeah.
is one of the criticisms of our current society is people are not encouraged to save.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the basic, when I grew up, that was one of the basic tenets. You always save for a rainy day, live below your means, save for a rainy day, and always pay for yourself.
Yeah.
And those basic qualities now, I don't know whether it's a generational thing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But, living
Well, and
the day.
I don't want to get too much into that tangent of the actual money management strategies, but particularly in the case of a church, the goal of a church, as we get resourced from our people, isn't to try to save it up and make sure we've got enough for a rainy day, right? The church, when gifts are given to the church, they're to be used, they're to be given back out, and to trust that God's going to give more. Same could be said for us as individuals. So obviously, I'm not trying to undo the lesson on savings, but we do want to be careful that it isn't just to hoard for that rainy day, but the gifts that are given to be used. And so we want to keep that in mind. So that's maybe something else that this guy did. Maybe he was a little too cautious. But why was that? And Larry said it. It was, he didn't, he said, you're a wicked, hard master, I think was your translation.
Hard master.
And he didn't really properly.
He didn't trust him.
Right. He didn't trust the master. He didn't really understand him. And I think
That's true. He didn't get the message, really.
didn't really know who he was. And think of how many people won't come to God because they just see him as a hard master that they're never going to be able to please. And they're missing who he is. They're missing the relationship he desires. They're missing the way he resources us. The parable doesn't go into that, but imagine whose life, during the time that the man was on his journey, whose life was more joyful, the one that was multiplying or the one that was hiding in fear. So they're missing out on really the whole purpose. So this is yet again a parable where Jesus is teaching the parable so that we get to know the kingdom, how things work in the kingdom, and we get to know the heart of our God better, a generous, personal, gracious master who knows us, equips us, and then commissions us to do his work and to join us, to join him in his kingdom work. So yeah, it's a little bit about stewardship, but maybe more it's about those other things, knowing God and then really knowing who we are and how he holds us and uses us. All right. That's Matthew. Let's move over to 1 Thessalonians. That's going to be Larry, I believe, is going to read us 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 11.
Now, brothers, about the times and dates we do not need to write to you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly, as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers, are not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. So then, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be alert and self-controlled. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be self-controlled, putting on faith and love as a breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. For God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. He for us so that whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing.
All right. So, what do you think? What do you make of this reading?
I like the whole thing that putting on faith and love as a breastplate and the hope of salvation as a helmet, because it kind of makes you realize how you really have to go out there, put yourself out there, and knowing that he's covering you, but you have to spread his salvation and his love. But if you don't, then you are probably asleep.
And I think it's a message of hope too, in that others who live in the darkness, those who don't have the faith that we do, don't really have the hope that we do. And I like the last verse where encourage one another and build each other up. I think that's important with Christians,
Good.
especially in times like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
That's good.
so light and darkness, you know, not only is necessarily a good and evil, but it also has to do with being aware, I guess you could say, what's truth being revealed, you know, being in the light is being aware. So there's both of those dynamics with light and dark. And in this case, it's a little bit of both. Obviously, there's the, you know, the wickedness of the world that we've overcome in Christ. But how about those, and this was actually last Sunday's reading. We didn't meet last week because of preschool chapel, but last Sunday's reading said, I don't want you to be ignorant about those that have fallen asleep. And this is really continuing on that theme. It appears as though, you know, the Thessalonian church is doing well. But yet real life is happening, right? And of course, it's 2,000 years later for us, a little closer. It was a little closer to Jesus' time then. And the believers were kind of like going, we thought Jesus would have returned by now. What's going to happen if what's going to happen to those people that died but aren't here when Jesus comes back? How are we going to be preserved? And he's saying, you know, he's comforting them and saying, yes, those who have died still have hope. So let us not be like others who are asleep. Actually, I'm actually talking a little bit more about last Sunday's reading. So let me just also get this context for us, and that is, you know, the readings follow the church year. And the church year roughly has two big pieces to it. If you didn't kind of know how we cycle the readings in church, roughly from Advent over to Pentecost is sort of the, well, Advent to what is the Ascension is the life of Christ. That's roughly about half of the calendar year, and half of the what we would call the church year. We go through the life of Christ, his ministry from his Advent, coming and being born, through his suffering, death, ascension, resurrection, and ascension. Then we move into what's sometimes called ordinary time, but it's basically the church half of the year. And we study a lot about things like the letter to the Thessalonians and the book of Acts, and, you know, our commissioning and our mission as disciples, and how we apply Jesus' teaching to our lives, things like the, you know, Sermon on the Mount and all of that. So that's roughly the year. So we're getting right at the cusp here. Because remember, the church year doesn't start in January. It starts in Advent, which is 4 weeks before Christmas. So this is this Sunday coming up is the penultimate Sunday of the church year. Next Sunday will be the last Sunday. They call that Christ the King Sunday in some traditions. So right now we're getting near the time where the church needs to be aware that Jesus is going to return. And it's kind of interesting because then you get a natural blending of both of them are comings. Right now we're kind of talking about the second coming of Christ, his return, and it blends right into Advent. Actually means coming, the coming of Christ, his first coming. So depending on your preacher, who I don't always hold to this exactly right. So sometimes, you know, even during Advent, I talk a lot about the second coming of Christ, because there is both. You know, we're 21st century Christians, and we know about both comings. So it's kind of a now and not yet. So even when we're talking in terms of Advent, which is the first coming of Christ,
Okay.
a lot of times I'll slip in and talk about the second coming of Christ. But these two Sundays here are really the Sundays where the church year focuses on the return of Jesus. Okay, with judgment, but that ultimately we are going to be resurrected in the body. And that's going to be the ultimate fulfillment of our salvation. And he's giving us hope that, yeah, there's going to be judgment, there's going to be death, and the Lord is coming for judgment. But for those who know him, it's comfort, it's good news. And Larry pointed that out, verse 11. So we aren't he didn't appoint us just to suffer wrath, verse 9, but to receive salvation. So he's just comforting them, saying,
Kitchen, Mom.
Jesus is going to return, and it will be for judgment, but not for us.
But I think he also mentions in here that we have to be prepared for, because you never know when he's coming.
Yeah.
But there's a section where they're saying that you have to have confidence and trust in God that you'll make it. You're very hopeful, but it also says that you have to be well prepared.
Good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And how do we get prepared? Verse 8. Right?
Faith and love and confidence.
Faith, love, and hope.
Yep.
And those are the clothes, or really it's tag teams on Ephesians chapter 6, the pieces of the armor. So it's a readiness that is aware that judgment is coming. I mean, I always do want to be careful, because, and we just last Sunday we had the parable of the 10 of the virgins who had their lamps, and some were prepared and some weren't. And so I always want to be careful, and this might be a good place to end this reading. What makes us prepared? Is it our good deeds? Is it the fact that we were literally staring at the heavens, not doing anything wrong when Jesus returned to find any unworthiness in us? The truth of the matter is he would find all kinds of unworthiness in us. He would find all kinds of things to judge us. But that robe of righteousness that Revelation talks about, that we've been washed and we've put on Christ, that Galatians talks about, washed in the blood of the Lamb, that is the readiness, our baptism and our faith, to which our baptism clings, if you will.
Right.
So actually this Sunday coming up, in a few days, I'll be talking about faith alone. And
Right.
this is what really what faith does, is faith trusts in the Lord. Faith trusts that he's been true in what he's revealed. He's true to his promises. That not only includes his promise of return, but his promise of salvation for those who are found in him. Not those who are worthy, because of our own righteousness. Of course, that's last week's message, grace alone, right? But worthy because we're found in him. Okay?
Well, I think it's putting him in charge and not us in charge.
That's right. I talked last Sunday about monergism. He's the doer. He's the one who's doing the saving, the protecting, the keeping. Okay? All right. We will wrap it up here with Zephaniah chapter 1, verses 7 through 16. There's even gospel in here.
Okay. Be silent before the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is near. For the Lord has prepared a sacrifice. He has consecrated his gifts. Then it will come about on the day of the Lord's sacrifice that I will punish the princes, the king's sons, and all who clothe themselves with foreign garments. And I will punish on that day all who leap on the temple threshold, who fill the house of their Lord with violence and deceit. And on that day, declares the Lord, there will be the sound of a cry from the fish gate, a wail from the second quarter, a loud crash from the hills. Wail, O inhabitants of the mortar, for all the people of Canaan will be silenced. All who weigh out silver will be cut off. And it will come about at that time that I will search Jerusalem with lamps. And I will punish the men who are stagnant in spirit, who say in their hearts, the Lord will not do good or evil. Moreover, their wealth will become plunder and their houses desolate. Yes, they will build houses, but not inhabit them, and plant vineyards, but not drink their wine. Near is the day of the Lord, near and coming very quickly. Listen, the day of the Lord. In it the warrior cries out bitterly. A day of wrath is that day of trouble and distress, a day of destruction and desolation, a day of darkness and gloom,
Yeah.
a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of trumpet and battle cry against the fortified cities and the high corner towers. And I will bring distress on men, so that they will walk like the blind, because they have sinned against the Lord. And their blood will be poured out like dust, and their flesh like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to deliver them.
What verse are you at there, Ed?
18.
Yep, I think we were going to go to 16.
Okay,
So-
I'm sorry. I had the 30 here.
Yeah,
me.
no, it's that's good. It gets a little depressing there. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but depressing for who, right? Maybe that's just the this is another one of those you can hear why it's chosen for these end times readings, if you will. Sometimes
I think it's for those who turn their backs against God. That's
Okay.
what they have to deal with. So if you're prepared and you live, you have faith and all that, you don't have to worry about all that stuff.
Well, there's really nothing that's going to protect you from the end of time.
No.
So you may think you're protected, but if
Well-
you're relying on external things or any kind of props other
Right.
than God, then you're going to be in trouble.
right, which has also been something that we've talked about heading into the election, right? We're not to trust in kings and horses, and here's the list. You got your chariots and your houses, and did I shorten it? I think I had all the reading.
Yeah.
But there's all these things that the houses are going to be demolished and the vineyards won't matter. Those things are all going to be destroyed. And of course, we know that in the day of judgment, all of this is going to be laid waste. None of it will save us. But of course, there is one who will save us. So this is a frightening day, but frightening for who? For those
who don't believe, they don't have faith.
right? Those who don't belong, those who aren't
With God.
of the
I'm
Lord's house.
reminded of that other, and I can't recall where that is in the Bible, but the landowner that Christ said, you want to follow me, and he said, I must first put my lands in order. And he says, you'll have no time to put your lands in order. Follow
I
me.
forgot what, yeah.
And I don't know where that was, but that
Yeah.
always resonated with me. You can
Yeah.
always find excuses for not following God right away. And there's a warning, I think, that's real clear in this passage.
Right. Yeah. The time of judgment won't be the time to return,
You're not going to have time to put your lands in order.
Yeah.
So another thing, just on a kind of a theological note, is when we're in these Old Testament prophetic passages that are looking forward, there's always the question of which judgment is this referencing? And what Lutheran theologians tend to do is to say, well, we don't necessarily have to resolve it. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and. So in one sense, this refers to the actual judgment that happened to Jerusalem with the destruction of the temple. But it also can refer to that great day of the Lord, capital D, when Jesus returns. And this judgment applies not just to the Old Testament people, but to the New Testament people who are also preserved against our adversaries, against the evil of today as well. Back they had Babylon back then and Rome, and we have our wickedness of today. And so it's the same. Just because it was written in the Old Testament, it isn't like this prophecy is older. Sometimes we describe it as like if I'm in a mountain range and I'm looking at the peaks of the mountain, the ones in the distance, they kind of look close. They kind of, it all flattens out, whether it's the far peak or the near peak, it all becomes kind of the same vision to the prophet.
Wow.
So we don't have to always resolve those. It can easily be, and for God, right, all things are possible. Both judgments are in view, and in fact, we shouldn't really be surprised at that, because think of how many things in the Old Testament are in fact types and shadows to point to things in the New Testament. So that earlier judgment was a partial, incomplete judgment, just like the earlier temple was a partial and incomplete temple. The full temple is Christ. The earlier land of the promised land was partial and incomplete. The earlier people with partial and incomplete. Now it's the full church, all of the people of faith. So I don't have a problem trying to solve which judgment is in view. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
All right, everybody. I do have a note of administration. Next week is Rochelle and my 31st anniversary.
Whoa.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
So we are going to be taking just a little getaway, going all the way to
good.
Ramona.
Ramona.
Just a little getaway for a few days. So unfortunately, that is going to interfere with our Bible study next week. And then the following week, I think, is Thanksgiving and all of that. So I don't know what's in store for us. I don't imagine. Now, you guys can, I just don't know. Is everybody going to be busy on Thanksgiving morning? I kind of assume we don't want to.
Yeah.
I have to cook.
Want to meet on Thanksgiving
we'll
morning.
be busy.
So, and then we're into that first week of December. It might be a month before we have our Bible studies, because anniversary, Thanksgiving, preschool chapels, and it's just unfortunate that happens. But it's kind of like if we don't shoot to do this weekly, then if we tried to do it monthly, we'd still have these clashes. So I think we shoot for it weekly, and then we just accept the times. I'll communicate by email if I misjudged a week, I forgot about a week or something like that, I'll let you know. But otherwise, it looks like it's going to be a handful of weeks before we're back together
December
again.
1st. Okay.
Yeah,
We'll be in Advent.
Yeah, the first week of December. That's what I have to check on my preschool chapel. So just watch your emails. I plan to do these through Advent until we get too close, Christmas Eve and all that. But there are a couple other hurdles we got to work around. So, all right.
Okay.
Thank you guys for being here, and enjoy the beautiful sunshine, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pastor.
God bless.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Thanks.
Thanks.